Hey, so I got an email about one of the pages on our website, and instead of just kind of replying to that email, I thought I'd make a quick video to kind of show how we do this. And this is kind of specific to Presto pages. So if you use Sidearm or another web provider, this probably isn't going to work. But for Presto, this should work. Full disclosure: this is not a documented thing of Presto, and so it may not work, but from everything I've seen, it seems like this is part of their default package for all their websites. So it should work if you have a Presto website that was redone with at least within the last couple years, and it's if it's a responsive website, this should work. So let's take a look. This is the page that someone asked about, and this is our records page, and records pages are boring. But I have it set up so that it is a responsive page. So it looks good on a desktop site, and if I switch over to a mobile view, you can see it still looks good, and it just wraps everything into one column. So how does this all work? Let's take a look at a different page to kind of give you, let's go to facilities. So this is a good example. The way this all works is using Presto's grid framework. And so what that means is there are columns and then there are rows. So in this example, there are 3 columns, and then within each one of those columns there are rows. And the grid system, most grid systems, and the one that Presto uses, is basically set up with 12 columns. And so you define how many columns you're going to use of that 12. And so, for example, in this one, there are 12 columns, right? And so in this one, we're using 6 columns here and 6 columns here. In this one, we're using 3 and 3 and 3 and 3 is 12. So 3 in each column. So that way, we've got this grid system, and on this page, here we've got multiple rows. On this page, it's actually just one row. It's one row with 2 columns, and so when it goes to the mobile view, this second column will just slide to the bottom, and so it's all easily viewable on a phone. So let's dig into how I do that. We'll start by going into the back end. And we'll go into that directory. And this is kind of a messy directory. But so to start with, let's look at that page. And so this is just an HTML page, not an article rich. It's just HTML. So, and let's zoom in so you guys can see that a little bit better. And so this is the grid. Right? So here's our code that defines the row. And so let's get rid of some of this just for now. So we'll show that later. So we start with a div with a class row fluid. And basically that's saying that this is a fluid row so that anything inside this row is going to be responsive. And like I said before, in our row, we need columns. And so we're going to define a column. And so another div. And let's close that div. So we've got this column. And now we're going to define how many columns that we're going to use up. And in this case, it's 6. So we're using half of the available 12. So we're going to go span 6. And let's create a second column, span 6. So now we've got 2 columns, each using 6. If we wanted 3 columns, we could add another one, but we'd have to change this to 4. So each one is 4. So now we'll have 3 columns each that are 4. Remember, these have to add up to 12. Now you could also do, for a records page, these even columns is what we want, but for another page, you may want uneven columns. So for example, if we wanted, this could be 4 and this could be 8. And so this one would be a little smaller column, and this would be a little bit wider. Actually, I can show you an example of where we do that. Let's go back here. So on the recruiting page, for example, this is an example of where we have a small column on the left and a bigger column on the right. So we're back here. We've got our columns. Sorry, no, too big. So we've got our columns, and we're gonna go back to making that 6 and 6. And then here's where we just put the data. We put whatever we want inside those columns. And the way I do things in Presto is I use a lot of included pages. So I could have all of that data. I could have all of this HTML all in one single page. But that gets cumbersome, especially with these records pages, because there's so much of it, and the tables are so big. So for me, it's much easier if I split those up into subpages. So this is a page on itself, and then this is a page on itself. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to do an include. So $website dot include, then the open parentheses and the double quotes, and then this is just the name of the file. And then what this is going to do is it's just going to include that file into this spot. And so that gives us the ability to have those files separate, and it's less cumbersome for editing and organization and whatnot. And so we'll just come back and paste all that stuff back in. Oh, no. I'm missing a, there we go, there we go. So I've got my fluid row, my column span 6, second column span 6, and then inside each one of those, I'm including a records page. So that should be good to go. Now, let's look at the actual pages. So if I come in here, the actual pages are just HTML tables. So I can look at the source code, and you can see these are just basic tables. The only thing that's special about them is this right here. The table class is woo-table-records. And this is what's going to make those tables look fancy. I mean, I could actually, let's just do this. Let's get rid of that, and we'll click OK. And so this is just a normal table. There's absolutely nothing special about this. This is just the equivalent of going, just adding a new table. And so if I save that, and then back to view, and we're looking at this page. And so you can see the difference now. This is the one that is styled, and this is the one that's not. There's nothing fancy. This is just the basic default HTML styles. And I don't like those, which is why I added my own custom CSS to make them look like this. So we'll go back in to this page, go into the source code, and I'm gonna copy that class back in there. And so now it looks good. And the way that CSS is defined, I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom and go to my style sheet. And in my style sheet, somewhere in here is woo-table-records. So there we are. These right here are what define what that looks like. And in the video, I'm going to post a link to these two gist repositories. One includes this right here, and this is the CSS. If you wanted things to look exactly like mine, you could just literally just copy and paste this into your CSS file. I use woo dash table for Lamb University, but you could keep that or add it to whatever you want. I always use this woo dash in whenever I'm customizing our CSS, so that I know that is custom CSS that I've added after the fact, and it's not Presto CSS. So it's just in there, and now we've got nice, clean records page that is responsive, and that's it. So if you have any questions, let me know.